I find that most people in this country think of Africa as a country, you know, and I'll take this straight back home to Washington State, where I'm from. I remember when I got my first fellowship to work in Africa for the year, my dad told me once on the phone, he said, "Oh, I had a customer come into the store today whose daughter's in Africa. You guys should get together when you're over there." Okay, like Africa is this, you know, this little place where we can all sort of say hi to one another.
People normally tell me, "Oh, you only fast because you used to chase lions in Africa. You only fast because you used to wrestle goats." I've never been in a jungle. I tell a lot of people, yeah, the only wild animal I've ever seen is a snake. And they were like, "But you're African. You're supposed to, you know, see elephants. You're supposed to ride on elephants," and, you know, really ridiculous stuff like that.
In school, like if I were to wear something that resembled from Sierra Leone, I was definitely going to be made fun of. It was like, "So speak your language." I've had people come to me like, you know, things like that.
I don't know, people definitely has a skewed perception of Africa.
But the thing that probably most, that I find most challenging about being at Bucknell, and this is probably not just Bucknell, but anywhere in the United States, is we just can't see beyond looking at Africa as a diseased continent.
You know, there's this rhetoric out there, what do Africans do? Well, they starve, because all you ever see is the famines and the soldiers, and so you think of war and pestilence and famine and drought when you think of Africa.
As a place of poverty, where people are miserable, they're starving, they have nothing to offer the world except for their miserable faces on television, and that it is our job as Westerners to go and to save these poor people.
Picture for a moment a little girl or a boy who doesn't know what it's like to just be a child. For children like this, who have nothing and no parents, you can tell that child that you care and that help is on the way. Please call the number on your screen or visit online to sponsor a child right now.
I think it goes wrong because there's no balance. There's not enough things countering what those negative images of the poor children, of the malnourished children. There, you don't really even see like commercials of touristy areas of Africa, or how it has pretty waters, or, you know, the art that's there, you know, the people, how they're friendly. You don't see anything like that.
This is the kind of nonsense that appears in the lower reaches of the British press. Once the jewel of post-colonial Africa, Kenya boasted a thriving economy and was among the world's leading luxury villa destinations. Now it's in meltdown with democracy in ruins and more than 1,000 dead in barbaric clashes. And as if this terrifying dispatch reveals, there's no sign of an end to the tribal bloodshed. That is a reasonably typical example of what does get out. And it's got, of course, all the buzzwords: tribal, barbaric, 1,000 dead, luxury holidays, very important for the readership.
I don't know. I mean, I've lived with Africans for about 3 years, and I've been working on and off with them for about 15 years now. And it's not at all the kind of picture you get when you're living in Africa. And I don't want to, take away, you know, from the power of political strife and conflict and what's going on in Africa. I mean, I think that we also have to be educated about that.
I wouldn't want to say, and I'm sure my colleagues wouldn't want to say, that there is no misery and bloodshed in Africa. It's a reflection, a strange reflection of, regrettably, a reality.
But at the same time, it's hard to see that dominate people's understandings, you know, of what Africa has to offer.
What tends to get missed out is what local people are doing about it. Because the master narrative must be a narrative of white redemption. The important thing to remember is that Africa is there so that whites can feel better about themselves. It has no obvious other function as far as the media is concerned.
Post-apartheid South Africa has one of the few constitutions in the world that make adequate housing a citizen's right. When democracy started in 1994, Durban's 800,000 or so shack dwellers put their faith in the African National Congress, the former liberation movement. Now, however, they've started their own movement. Abashlali Bazem Jondolo, literally the people of the shacks, is voluntary and community-based. Its slogan is, "Talk to us, not about us."
For the first time, the poor now are beginning to speak for themselves. Now that threatens those in higher authorities who are paid to think for us, who are paid to speak for us.
In September 2007, Abashlali members marched to the local municipal office with a memorandum of demands.
I think that the famines in Ethiopia in the 80s really did a number on how we in the West view Africa. Even talking to Peace Corps workers, people say that they usually gain weight when they go to Africa. I mean, there is a lot of food in Africa, and it is delicious food. There's such a rich cuisine, and I don't think people ever get to think about that. When we think of Africa, we think of the absence of food. You know, not all of this wonderful culinary traditions that they have all over the continent. And I think it's great, you know, that people engage in efforts to try to eradicate poverty, you know, but at the same time, we have to understand, do Africans themselves focus on their poverty? You know, I found poverty, for example, to be much more difficult an issue in big cities in Africa than I did in village areas where people seem to have what they needed.
Most people associate Africa with rural poverty, and in fact, Africa has huge cities, and they have all of the things that American cities have. You know, they're really vibrant culturally. They do have something that American cities don't. They have vast slums. Interestingly, the stereotype of rural poverty in Africa is not where the real problems are, because the folks in rural areas usually have a ready food supply. The real problems actually in Africa are the folks who left their rural areas because they didn't have land or opportunities and came to these urban slums. So in fact, the development problem in Africa is an urban slum problem as much as it is anything else, and yet ironically that's not the thing that you hear a lot about. What it needs is economic development. They need jobs, basically, like anybody else does.